Story 1. I was put under for surgery recently. I lost consciousness and then woke up a few hours later with no sense of the passing of time. No memories, no dreams, nothing at all. Story 2. I don't really know. Maybe nothing. But I do know that we continue in this world through the love we gave to others who remember us. Story 3. When you unplug your computer, it stops working. The same thing happens with the human body. When chemical processes stop occurring, you die. Story 4. I read that the brain releases various chemicals when facing death. I like to believe this results in experiencing a wonderful final dream where one knows happiness and peace before consciousness ceases to exist. That's a comforting thought. Story 5. I don't know. Our bodies don't function anymore and we decompose, but enough experiences with dimethyltryptamine makes me think there's at least a 15-minute period of something that may or may not feel like an eternity or a longer time as your brain shuts down. I'm not an adherent to any particular religious tradition, but it seems like there's something beyond our experience of matter. What that is, I don't know, and as I am now, I don't think it's knowable. It's quite amazing to think that when we die, our matter becomes part of everything and eventually contributes to new life. That's profound. Story 6. I don't have any religious beliefs, but I know that in nature, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It simply changes form. This is what will happen after we die. Whether or not your consciousness will be retained is unknown, but the components of your body will be released back into nature to be reconstituted into something else, living or non-living. We were once part of stars and cosmic dust, and now we can reflect on that. Perhaps this may happen again if the right circumstances come together. Story 7. I came close to death a couple of years ago due to complications from chemotherapy. Felt like I was going home. Story 8. Nothing that we are consciously aware of. That is why I do not fear death. I believe that heaven and hell occur on earth while we are alive, influenced by our own internal thoughts and approach to life. Story 9. I sometimes think about it, but I genuinely don't know. I have my doubts about whether it simply goes black, but I don't believe we could ever truly understand what it really is. Story 10. Upon brain death, I believe that my consciousness ceases to exist. My body will decay, and the people I impacted will remember who I was and how I made a difference in their lives. The brain is necessarily tied to consciousness, so without it, all that makes me who I am will be lost permanently. Story 11. I'm a lifelong and somewhat strident atheist. If you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said, nothing, it's like switching off a light. My father died a decade ago after a long and difficult fight with cancer. I had stepped out of the nursing home where he spent the last few months of his life to deal with some of his paperwork. Dying is a complicated legal process on top of everything else. I was staying at a friend's old New England house near the facility. Suddenly, I heard, as clear as day, the doorbell ring. I was right by the door, so I opened it to see what was going on. There was no one there, no packages, nothing. Not 30 seconds later, I received a call from the nursing home saying that my dad had passed away. I didn't really put it all together until later that day. The doorbell was an old mechanical mechanism. You physically had to turn a dial to get it to ring. Couldn't have been an electrical short or anything else. I'm still an atheist, but now I'm open to the idea that there may be other levels of reality that we can't perceive. Perhaps we can somehow maintain coherence long enough to say goodbye. I guess I believe in ghosts now. I'll also note that my dad's awful girlfriend of 20 years, who abandoned him when he started to get really sick, didn't receive any signal when he passed. Make of that what you will. Story 12. Maybe it's something that we genuinely don't have the cognitive ability to conceptualize, so why worry about it now? I have too much to deal with to expend energy worrying. Story 13. When you die, you do not know you are dead. It is only difficult for those around you. It is the same if you are not intelligent. Story 14. I read a theory suggesting that the phenomenon of life flashing before our eyes, reported by individuals with near-death experiences, may be the brain doing us one last favor. It freezes our consciousness and replay our memories repeatedly, helping us feel alive. That brief moment of life flashing before us can feel like an eternity. I find this theory intriguing. Story 15. As many have said, there is nothing. More specifically, there is a complete cessation of consciousness and thus nothingness. Presumably, one's body decays, people remember you for a while, but eventually even your memory ceases to exist. Sometime after your physical death, no one will remember you, and everything you have done will be forgotten. Story 16. Nothing. It's like unplugging your television. I feel like religion was created to provide people with something to believe in, to offer them hope in times of need, as some individuals require that. Story 17. Either nothing or I am about to embark on the greatest adventure ever. Either way, I have no control, so let's just see how it goes. Though, if I were a betting person, I would say it's just nothing. Story 18. As energy cannot be created or destroyed, only reorganized, I choose to believe that our bioelectric energy is what remains after our physical body dies. This would explain how ghosts, if they truly exist as former people, seem to be attracted to sources of power. Story 19. Death is the off switch, nothing else. There is no other life afterward. We return to the elements, and the circle of life continues without us. Story 20. A nothingness so profound that our mortal minds can never truly comprehend it, which is why many look to religion for comfort. Story 21. Nothing. Your consciousness ceases and your body decomposes like any other living creature on this planet. There is no existing in blackness or anything. You simply do not exist at all, just as it was before you were conceived. Story 22. Your consciousness ceases to exist. Your molecules are recycled. Religion positions humans at the top of a hierarchy deserving of eternal consciousness, which is naive. Story 23. I have read many near-death experiences, which is about as close to understanding death as we can get. Based on the hundreds of thousands of stories across various time periods and cultures, there seem to be many similarities in people's experiences after death. I am inclined to believe that what they have experienced is true, and that there is some form of life or consciousness after death. Story 24. Hardware degrades and dissolves. Software decompiles. Stored information is lost. Blank screen and silence. Story 25. The aliens I communicate with via electromagnetic wave signals broadcasted over the ionosphere and onto our electrical grid inform me that your mental data is being used to further their agenda by enhancing their humanity control system of mind control. They demonstrated this to me, and anyone can verify it by placing an aluminum can on the trackpad of their laptop computer. If the cursor on the screen moves by itself, it indicates that the aliens have control of the device and you have been contacted. Story 26. Alright, you might want to take a moment for this one, but I believe that from a strictly scientific standpoint, reincarnation to exactly what we are now is the most likely outcome. Let me explain. Let's make two significant assumptions. 1. Time is infinite, and 2. The universe will begin collapsing upon itself until it becomes a singularity once again, and will eventually transform into a new universe, creating an endless cycle of expansion and contraction. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, so all of the matter that constitutes us exists as subatomic particles and will exist infinitely in the future and the past. Our bodies and consciousness are made up of these subatomic particles arranged in a specific manner. For you to be born and live your experiences, all the way up to where you are now, requires a precise arrangement of subatomic particles and specific events. The particles that make us form atoms, which form molecules, which form cells, and those cells make our brains, etc. The same particles that compose you have existed since the Big Bang and will continue to exist for eternity. It is possible that after a big crunch and then a new Big Bang, all those particles will arrange themselves again to form exactly what we are now as you read this. Now you might say, okay, the odds of the same particles and same events all coming together in a new universe after the big crunch are incredibly small, and you would be correct. However, if time truly is infinite, then it will happen eventually an infinite number of times. Yes, it may take trillions of cycles for the subatomic particles to arrange themselves in a perfect mirror of what our world is now, ourselves included. But if time is indeed infinite, then it will happen over and over again. This is similar to the paradox of the monkeys writing Shakespeare by randomly pressing buttons on a typewriter. It's easy to dismiss it or say, well, it would take trillions of years, but that's inconsequential on an infinite timeline. You can also compare it to Hoyle's fallacy, which claims that the odds of a tornado going through a junkyard and arranging the parts into a working airplane are astronomically low. However, it doesn't consider infinity. With infinite time, that tornado will eventually arrange those parts into a working plane, even if it takes eons. In conclusion, presuming the universe resets itself, expansion followed by contraction infinitely, then the same arrangement of subatomic particles that makes you will happen again an infinite number of times. It's even possible that you've read this exact statement an infinite number of times, with the exact same arrangement of atoms making up your brain and consciousness as you have right now, and will continue to, even if there are trillions of years in between that we won't be conscious of. We will meet again. Story 27. Nothing. You cease to exist, just like you did before your father conceived you with your mother. This is similar to what many religious people believe happens to animals. Story 28. Nothing. Your thoughts and feelings are gone, and your body decomposes, just like a raccoon that was hit by a car. Story 29. I am part of a natural system of life and death. I was born and I will die. It's a beautiful thing that I get to feel the world through my senses before I return to rest and they are turned off. Knowing this is my only life makes me appreciate it even when it is truly difficult. Story 30. The long sleep. Unless dreaming, you have no clue you are asleep. Like that, but forevermore. Gone, poof, nothingness. Story 31. Reincarnation, whichever mysterious and immeasurable essence our consciousness originates from, will seep below the physical medium we exist through and, in the universe's attempt to reach equilibrium, sprout us somewhere else. Story 32. I hope to cease to be, but I will take any of the following options. Ice Guy protagonist. Reincarnated into something or someone cool. Reliving the same life but making different choices and experiencing different histories. Reliving this life with all my memories and making the correct choices. Gender swap alternate universe. Reborn in another galaxy as part of an alien race that has mastered space travel. Life continues after death and existence is larger than we thought. Encountering God at the pearly gates asking if he is real to me now, and then being drop-kicked into hell. Because I don't know, and I do not claim to know. Story 33. Not religious in the slightest, but from dust we come and to dust we shall return sounds about right. Story 34. You just die. There is no afterlife. Just because we are a higher form of intelligent life and can contemplate what happens afterward does not mean anything actually exists. We die, our bodies decompose, and that is the end of us. Story 35. It is unclear what non-existence is, and I do not believe it is something we can truly or fully comprehend. Story 36. In non-existence, time goes by infinitely fast. Eventually, the heat death of the universe occurs, and all matter is ultimately consumed by wandering singularities. This matter is then expelled in a cycle reminiscent of the Big Bang, marking the beginning of a new journey from the Planck second to stable galaxies and solar systems. Life evolves, and once again, here we are. Story 37. I was watching White Lotus the other day, and a Buddhist monk described conception as a drop of water separating from the ocean and death as the drop falling back into the ocean. I think that analogy is beautiful because even if there is something after death, it is as different from life as conception is. Nobody who is alive can tell you what death is like for certain. Nobody who is alive can remember what was before life. More importantly, why be concerned with it? You are alive. There are plenty of things to worry about in this plane of existence. Even if you believe in an afterlife, there is no reason to worry about it. All of the instruction manuals tell us how to live our lives, and the vast majority of them tell us not to be unkind. Personally, I do believe in heaven and hell, but not as afterlives. Rather, I see them as states of mind during life. If you follow the golden rule, and so does everyone you encounter, then your life and mentality will be heavenly. However, if you are constantly treating others poorly or frequently encounter people who treat you poorly, then you will feel like you are in hell. Story 38. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. There is a reality for each of us after death. My sister died last year. She has reached out to everyone who loved her, letting them know she is happy and safe in their dreams. My father-in-law is still present in his house because family still lives there. It's not scary. I have always believed we are born and live to improve our souls. Love is the only thing we take with us, so focus on that for true wealth. Story 39. The bacteria in your stomach spill out and eat your decaying flesh. You become a feast for bacteria. Story 40. I believe anything is possible. Part of me hopes there is a higher being to punish people who commit horrible crimes against others, but nothing like what any religion believes. I also hope for reincarnation. Story 41. I know there is something, but I don't know what that something is. I had many strange experiences when my grandparents died. I believe that I will be with my loved ones. I don't think it is a type of existence we can understand while we are here. Story 42. I used to think nothing, but since my dog died a year ago, I secretly wish there is some magical place where I can see him again. Story 43. I am agnostic but was raised Lutheran to a certain point in my childhood. My honest answer is that I don't know. No one really knows, but many have faith in a belief. I have faith that something does happen, but what that is, I have no idea, and it is probably something we cannot even fathom due to the limitations of our knowledge. I do not believe that we are the result of some random chemical interaction. I have a hard time believing that everything we see in the world is just an accidental occurrence. However, I am also okay with not attempting to label it or prescribe a theology to it. I accept not knowing or not understanding. I will find out when the time comes. Story 44. I believe that we do not know and will either find out after we die or we will not, because we will not exist and therefore not know that there is nothing. Story 45. Chitty from The Good Place said it best. Picture a wave in the ocean. You can see it, measure it, its height, the way the sunlight refracts when it passes through. Then it crashes on the shore and it's gone. But the water is still there. The wave was just a different way for the water to be for a little while. I don't know what happens, and that is part of the fun of living. I don't welcome death, but it is the next great adventure after living. Knowing what is coming or speculating on it won't get me anywhere. It is like constantly thinking about and stressing about the future. Sometimes you just have to live life and accept that in the future you will still be the water, just in a different form than you are today. Story 46. I like to believe that my consciousness returns in some shape or form. It scares me to think that I will stop existing at some point. However, there was also a time when I began to exist. Who's to say it can't happen again? Story 47. I am no longer religious. I believe we live in a simulated reality. Your current file of collective consciousness is archived, and the program restarts within the same shared simulation. Occasionally, that archiving is corrupted or incomplete, and some memories may remain within the folder. That is how some people are able to recall previous lives. Story 48. I believe in non-existence, like many others have replied. Just because my existence is gone, the story of my actions lives on. The atoms I was made of will travel to other living beings. My actions will have impacted the course of life for many lives, humans, animals, and plants alike. Like ripples in an ocean, I will leave an impact. However, in essence, I will be gone and will not be able to think about it afterward. As for the question, why act nicely if there are no consequences for being bad? My actions live on. If life has no meaning after I'm gone, I might as well make it worth living for myself and others. I feel that the absence of an afterlife actually makes my life more important now. If I lived forever with the people I loved, why make an effort in the approximately 80 years I have when I would have billions of years to enjoy with them afterward? Even living for a billion years sounds torturous to me. I'd rather have 80 good years than countless eternal ones. Story 49. I am not religious, but I am not atheistic. I believe in a continuation of life elsewhere, not in a biological sense, but as an energy. I died when I was 12 and had a brief experience. Clinically, I should not have been able to be resuscitated without brain damage. Story 50. I genuinely don't know. Maybe religion is correct, or perhaps we become energy in the universe. Maybe nothing, who knows? Story 51. In my case, my body, and more importantly my brain, will be filled with cryoprotectants and slowly cooled to liquid nitrogen temperature, then stored in a giant thermos in Arizona for a few decades. Hopefully, future doctors will determine that I'm not quite dead yet and will be able to restore me. But if that fails, then after death, you are just gone. Everything else is wishful thinking. Even cryonics is wishful thinking to some extent, but at least it's wishful thinking supported by science. Story 52. They put you in a large black box and cover you with dirt and rocks. All goes well for about a week. Then your coffin begins to leak. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. The worms play a game on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose. They consume the jelly between your toes. Story 53. I believe my body will either rot in the ground or burn in an incinerator. As for my mind, personality, spirit, soul, consciousness, or however you may refer to it, I think it will cease to exist, or it may somehow linger on, but there is no way to know for sure. Story 54. I heard it explained beautifully. Waves on a beach are beautiful and unique, but they last only a moment before returning to the ocean to be created anew over and over again. Story 55. What happens after you die? Lots of things happen after you die. They just don't involve you. Louis C.K. Story 56. Scientifically, the energy from the body disperses into other forms, and the body itself becomes nourishment or fuel for other organisms. Spiritually, I am uncertain. I assume we return to a state of non-existence, but I am also comfortable with not fully knowing. Story 57. I believe the spark of energy that animates our physical body rejoins the source of the energy of the universe. By the way, I am not a pantheist. I am anti-theist. I am neither an atheist nor an agnostic. Story 58. It took me a long time to believe there is a God who feels everything I feel, but so much deeper. Not just a judgmental figure in the sky playing tricks, but a deeply caring and understanding God watches his creations interact. It is brutal to contemplate, but I have faith, and there is peace in it. I pray for all my atheist brothers and sisters, and I always will. Story 59. I don't know. No one does. People have always created stories about the afterlife, often as part of a religion, which reflects people's beliefs and opinions. I strive to live a positive life, helping others, both human and animal, and exploring this beautiful world and the creativity of others. Again, no one alive knows what happens after death. Story 60. The system goes offline, and the organic materials begin to break down for other life forms to utilize. Make the most of your time here. It is difficult to believe that we all go to some celestial clubhouse with an inconsiderate person and his chemistry set. Story 61. I have seizures. When I'm unconscious, I don't remember anything and am not aware of my surroundings. I imagine that's what it will be like when you die. You just slip away into nothing. Fortunately, so far, I've regained consciousness every time I've had a seizure. Story 62. I have undergone surgery twice. There is a calming sensation that comes with anesthetic. It is comfortable, but it feels like nothing at all. I believe that is what will happen to my subconscious, but my body will be under a butterfly garden, which is nice. Story 63. The ending of The Good Place sums it up for me. Our energy returns to the universe from which it originated. Story 64. Nothing. You are dead. Life is gone. You cease to exist, other than your rotting corpse feeding the last bit of energy your body has into the earth, giving other life forms energy. That is my opinion, anyway. Story 65. The universe existed for billions of years before I was born, and I did not seem to notice. It will be the same for the billions of years after I am gone. Story 66. It starts with your intestines and germs. Next, you become a cadaver infested with worms. That is man's destiny. It's best that he learns. Story 67. You are not even aware of being dead. The biggest assumption of your entire life is that each moment will be followed by another. This forms the continuity of your existence, the thread from past to present. Your brain is constantly anticipating the extension of that continuity into the future. We have a hard time thinking of what it would be like for the moments to stop, for future continuity to not happen. We always want to ask what happens next, but there is no next moment, nothing else to experience. There is no blackness, no floating in an eternal void, no nothingness, because there is no you there to experience those things. I do not know how many of you have been put under for surgery. Most of the time, there is no sensation of time passing, and no dreams or thoughts during your time under. They put the mask over your face, and then you close your eyes, and when you open them again, you are in the recovery room. So death is just like that, except without the part where you open your eyes again. Assuming you die of old age, you will feel more sick and more tired. Then one day you will feel very tired and close your eyes. And that is it. There is no what happens next. Story 68. Nothing may seem scary to many people, but I cannot remember anything from before I was born, so I assume it is much like that. When we enter a body or reincarnate, we leave the memories of our past lives and everything we were doing without a vessel behind. I don't think it is as scary or stressful as being alive, not to sound morbid. If you think about the world and your life, all the stress, uncertainty, grief, and trauma, it can be beautiful at times. Yes, it is definitely a mixed bag of ups and downs, but after decades of these ups and downs, I think drifting into a dark embrace of nothing but peace sounds nice. Feels like a reward. Story 69. Time is only noticed when it is being experienced. This universe will end, and a new one will begin. Eventually, a universe will occur where I exist again. An infinite loop of infinite possible lives. Story 70. We are not that important. Religion is based on the idea that we are magical cosmic beings immune to death as we transcend to another stage. However, we are just great apes and die like everything else. Story 71. I, as a person, cease to exist. Hopefully, I did enough good things to outnumber the bad, and maybe if I did well enough, a handful of people will remember me with love and be inspired to do the same for others. I would love to believe in something like reincarnation, but I just don't. Story 72. Nothing, and after the next 3 to 4 generations, you will be gone forever. No living person has ever met you. You are not just forgotten. You simply do not exist. If this seems like a boring or somehow harsh option, do something significant and write your name in history. Story 73. When you die, you cease to exist. There are no thoughts, awareness, or memory of having ever lived, just like before you were born. This is not something to fear because there will not be a you to feel fear. However, for those you leave behind, your impact will still be felt. That is where meaning lies, not in trying to live a sin-free life to earn a spot in some divine afterlife or to avoid eternal punishment, but in living a life that genuinely matters to the people around you. If, after you are gone, others can say, "They made my life better in these ways," then you have left a legacy worth something. Even if that legacy only lasts a generation or two after you are gone, no matter how big or small, it mattered, and so did you. Story 74. Do you remember what it was like before you were even conceived? No, it will probably be just like that. Pure, utter nothingness. Story 75. People cannot imagine living without consciousness or memories. Yet every night we lie down and enter several hours of deep sleep during which exactly this happens. Dreams aside, I believe death is simply a sleep from which one never awakens. It will feel exactly like falling asleep. Consciousness fades into the background, and a dark numbness envelopes you like a shroud. That is the end, as difficult as it is for our minds to accept. Story 76. To the mind, gone. To the body, either decomposition or cremation, but definitely no anxiety, no depression, and no waking up to work. Story 77. The only thing you can know is the present, so make an honest effort. If the molecules of your current being reassemble into another conscious, perhaps even sentient, life cycle, that's great, but you will never know who or what you once were or will be. Story 78. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I will still be all the molecular pieces that I was, but I will no longer be me. I will still be a part of the earth, and with that I find some peace. Story 79. Nothing, you are dead. I just do not understand the insecurity people have that leads them to believe there is something after this life. Story 80. I think our body decomposes. I don't believe in the concept of the soul as a separate entity, but rather as the part of us that is recognizable beyond the physical. So when we die and our brain no longer animates us, we simply shut down and slowly decompose. Story 81. Exactly what happened before I was born. Quite simply, I did not exist, and that's what I expect to happen all over again after I die. A sweet release from this nonsense we call life. Story 82. I think Keanu Reeves said it best when answering the Colbert Questionnaire. When you die, the people who loved you will be very sad. Story 83. I will decay underground, and my family will likely cry for a while, then less over time until I am forgotten. Story 84. Life is not a substance like water. It is a process like fire. When you extinguish the flame, it doesn't go anywhere. It simply stops. Story 85. Your body will decompose into the earth, but your legacy will live on in the hearts of your family and close friends. The end. Story 86. The electrochemical reactions in my brain will cease, and my consciousness, the most impactful part of me, will no longer exist. My body will decay or be cremated. Story 87. You stop existing. Everything that defines a person resides in the brain, and when that ceases, you also cease to exist. Story 88. Do you remember how things were before you were born? That's how it will be after you pass away. Story 89. We return to what we were before birth. We become a nutrient source for various organisms, allowing life to flourish on a microscopic scale. It is our last gift. Story 90. The body decomposes and fertilizes plants. The plants produce oxygen, which helps humans breathe. This process culminates in a baby's first breath, bringing new life into the world. Story 91. Not all major religions believe in an afterlife. Most schools of Judaism, for example, reject the concept. As an atheist, I can tell you that my physical body will exist for a while and then decompose, but I, as a person, will live on only in memories until the last person who knew me passes away. Story 92. I almost died twice. The first time, when I woke up 10 days later, I had no memory of anything that had happened for several hours before I went into a coma. Now I think dying is mostly like going to sleep, at least mentally. Our brain protects us from pain in several ways. So I think it's a bit like shutting off a computer. For me, there was no tunnel of light or mystical experience. Story 93. Have you ever been sedated for surgery? Feels like a short sleep, and then you wake up in recovery. Death is similar, but you don't wake up. You don't know you are dead, just like you don't know you are sedated. Perhaps you awaken somewhere else after you die? Story 94. Who truly cares about what happens after you die? Religion often fills your mind with fear and uncertainty. Story 95. I am not very religious. I think religion has caused a lot of problems in the world. However, to answer your question, I don't care what happens after I die. I am a good person, so whatever happens afterward is what happens. Story 96. I heard a good analogy once. Put your hand over your left eye. You can see your hand, right? You have evidence that your left eye exists. Close your left eye. It is no longer about perspective. It is as though you do not know what a left eye is. That's where people who believe in the afterlife and those who do not see things differently. One perspective is about existence, while the other is about perspective. Story 97. I had the most remarkable experience. I was a rehabilitation technician at a nursing home with a dementia unit. There was a lady I admired. She was blind and had dementia. Usually quiet, she could be grumpy and feisty when disturbed, but she was also very stoic. We would sometimes place her at the piano, and she would play the most amazing songs. One day, while I was wheeling her to therapy, she started reaching up, as if reaching out for something, saying, "My sister. I see my sister and Jesus." I, thinking it was just a part of her dementia, replied, "Yes, Elizabeth, I have a sister too." Just going along with it. She continued to reach up the whole time I was pushing her into the gym. Once I got her in there, we had a standing frame, so I helped her into it. She was looking out a beautiful window facing a tree, and once she was secure, I walked around to face her. I looked directly into her eyes and saw them focus intensely. It was as if I was seeing the cones of her eyes come into clarity. She had the most amazing blue eyes. It was so clear and striking. When I realized what had happened, I told the other therapists, "I don't think Elizabeth is with us anymore." They got her out of the frame, checked for a pulse, and took her upstairs to proceed with end-of-life care. I hold on to that moment. I see it as if it were yesterday. I have always been afraid of death, even to this day. But I remember that moment, which was not painful, and she wasn't suffering or screaming as one might typically associate with death. She truly saw her sister, Jesus, and then, just like that, she was gone while I looked into her eyes. How many people can say they have had that experience? It wasn't an accident or mere chance. I appreciate that moment with her. She was 98 years old, and the universe aligned us in that moment. Maybe the universe gave me that experience so I can see that it's not all bad. Sometimes it just happens, and where we go afterward, we don't know. But she saw her sister, Jesus. Whatever she believed, she saw. Maybe that's all there is, what we believe. Story 98. Non-existence will be like you never existed at all. The atoms that were fortunate enough to interact with you will persist beyond entropy. Story 99. Our atoms are repurposed repeatedly. Consider that we have lived as cave people, possibly as cats in ancient Egypt, as witches during the Inquisition, as dogs in the Renaissance, as bats during World War I, as bootleggers during Prohibition, and as individuals during the reign of Cittadini as the leader of America. I am an atheist, but I firmly reject the concept of a deity. Story 100. I will be transported to a funeral home and cremated or buried, and if I'm really lucky, someone somewhere will shed a tear. I highly recommend this 2-minute read of a eulogy by Aaron Freeman. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. The marvels of reality are far more wondrous than any religious claim I've ever heard. Story 101. Remember what it was like when you were a fetus in the womb? Yes, I don't recall it either. It will be just like that. Story 102. If you are born again, you go to heaven. If you do not believe that by not accepting that Christ died for our sins, then hell is the default. I am not religious. Religion has nothing to do with being a follower of Christ. It was religious people who killed him. Story 103. Why exclude those who have saving faith in Jesus Christ when they are the ones who truly have the answers you need? The Bible describes exactly what happens when we die. It is worth a read. Story 104. I believe death is very similar to the time before I existed. Events will occur without me because I am not present. Death is the end. Some people may find this depressing, but I believe it makes life more valuable and precious. Story 105. I started doubting at 7 and was an atheist at 11. I don't believe in anything regarding what happens after death, whether for myself, anyone else, or anything else, apart from the fact that corpses obviously decompose. I can't even say I'll know the answer when I die because if there is no longer an I, how will I know what happens? It may be unknowable, and I'm fine with that. Story 106. I don't know what happens to our soul if we have one. Physically, my choice for after I die is to be composted. My body will decompose, and the compost will be spread in a park or a flower garden. Story 107. The part of you that you care about most no longer exists. For you, the answer is that nothing happens. You are no longer part of the picture. Story 108. Our physical bodies simply break down and disappear. Our essence lives on in the memories of those who cared about us. Story 109. Linear time is a subjective experience of being alive. Before you were born, there was no concept of before or after. After you die, there is no concept of after or before. All I know is that I will return to the same void I was in before I was born. I also know that I somehow managed to escape from the void at least once already. Story 110. It's a very scary concept. I mean, the evidence I'm using is what it was like before we were born. A lot of people don't seem to think about that. Story 111. Do you remember what life was like before you were born? Of course not. That's exactly what's going to happen again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.